I'm not queer. I know many who are. I want to learn more about queer and ADHD intersectionality, so I invited Chris Wang, who is the co-founder and CEO of Shimmer, the #1 coaching platform for teens and adults with ADHD. After being diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, Chris started Shimmer to build a more neuro-inclusive world. She was recognized as a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree for her work transforming ADHD support. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure being here.
I let everyone do a little bit of a plug. Who are you? Where'd you come from? And get a little bit of story here because I want to learn more about you in this episode.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Chris. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Shimmer, as you mentioned. The kind of story here of Shimmer started when I was diagnosed at 28 years old, and I was hunting for a behavioral solution. And I know we're going to talk about culture a bit. And it was because growing up Asian, I was taught to have to stigmatize medication. And so I didn't directly go for medication. Now I do, but I've been on a pretty long journey since then. But I was looking for a behavioral solution, discovered coaching. And once I did that, it was pretty evident it was super expensive. There was a very messy process in terms of consultations and just trying to get to the right person. So in a nutshell, that was what we were solving for. We were trying to create something that was far more affordable for people with ADHD, but also just one by one get rid of all of those friction points that I was seeing. So really ADHD style, just creating that solution that I was looking for. That's a bit on Shimmer, which I can get more into, but specifically for me, I know we're talking about queerness in this episode, but the identities that are important to me that I think aren't talked about enough in the ADHD space is definitely queerness, also being Asian, or just all BIPOC folks have a slightly different experience, just different ways of being on the fringes, and then also being women, since a lot of women now are being diagnosed with ADHD, as you know. But I kind of had that growing up, had that hyperactive ADHD experience where I was bouncing off of the walls, constantly getting in trouble, getting kicked out of classes. And the only reason I didn't get a diagnosis as a kid, in my opinion, is because that conversation doesn't exist in the Asian culture. So even though I was getting in all of these issues, my mom would just discipline. Discipline is the answer, and just sit down. Sit down, time out, all those kind of things, which
so
I think is very
common. Stop being you and be better.
Yeah, exactly. Which now it's funny because all of my strengths have to do with not sitting down, not stopping to talk, not like taking more risks, all the things that I was told as a kid to just not do.
Yeah, and risk is also based on the person's perceptions and comfortableness. Like everyone says I'm risky, but to me, it's not, I mean, there's risk, but it's not the end of the world. But for me, it's like I like to try stuff and then find out it won't work or not versus being told and not trying. So you discussed the queer, the cultural aspect, in your case, Asian, and then women. So how do those three intersect? And, has it affected how you self-understanding or self-appreciating yourself?
Yeah. So luckily, I didn't go through all of these realizations all at once because I think that would be a little bit overwhelming. I obviously, being a woman and Asian, that's something that has been my whole life. So those kind of put aside, since it wasn't something I had to, I guess, consciously process. But the first one was I came out as being pansexual when I was 24. So I was an adult and I started to work already, and I had lived my entire life in the closet. And pansexual, my definition of it basically is just that I don't really think about gender. It's not like I like this gender or that one. It just is. It's just the human. And so I had that not diagnosis. I came out when I was 24, but I knew my entire life. I just was aggressively against it. Like I really didn't want it to be true because I didn't want to deal with it. And then
queerness side, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I had my first secret girlfriend when I was 15. And I remember how much shame I felt around that. And even when my best friends pulled me aside to say like, hey, are you dating this girl? Because we think you are. I was so angry at them. I was like, how could you possibly think that? And we got into this massive fight and they never brought it up again. And I was definitely dating the girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I felt so defensive, and I was mad at them that they could possibly say that. And so obviously I'm in a very different space right now. I'm completely out, and I think that it's really important if people are in a space where they can to talk about it, because it gives permission for other people to talk about it as well.
I got a couple questions on that. You're hiding it, then got called out in
Mm,
probably the wrong term, but they were genuinely curious to know. But your reaction to it, was that more of the fear of being caught, quote unquote, and being called out? Or I'm just trying to make a little bit of, I want to understand why you got upset with them asking them. Is
mhm.
this just because you use the term, how dare they?
Yeah. So I've thought about this a lot. In the moment, I obviously didn't know. I was a kid.
Yeah, fair
I was
enough.
just angry. But now thinking about it, I think there was a couple things. One, I I was always told, and I think Asian or not, a lot of people have this, that there's this specific path that you go on. And I always
Hmm.
wanted to do the right thing. I didn't always do it, but I always wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to get good grades. I wanted to be the perfect, they call it like model minority, but be the perfect kid and be the perfect person. And in my head, perfect was straight. And that was just what I was conditioned to think. So being queer meant that I was doing something, I wouldn't say as far as the word wrong. I don't think I thought it was wrong. I just thought it was harder and less right in the context of my life. So I think that's where the defensiveness came from. I think the other point that is important too is I I think Miley Cyrus was the one who taught me the word pansexual. And before I discovered the word pansexual, I didn't resonate with the word bisexual, because bisexual meant like you actively like men and women, like multiple genders. And I remember telling that girl when I was 15 that, like, hey, I don't like, she's like, you like girls. I was like, I don't like girls. I just like you. And she was like, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, well, that's just how I feel. And so I think later on in life, discovering the word pansexual was also really helpful for me.
So I gave you clarity with understanding your feelings towards other people, other
Yeah,
humans.
exactly. And I just, I think when people would say like, oh, you're bisexual or you're lesbian, I was like, no, I just don't, that's not even true. So I think there was like this second layer of rebelling
Yeah,
against it. And that's why I think language is so important.
tremendously. And that's where I really want to do with this podcast is we get clear language and vocabularies to explain this. So I just can't imagine how that term pansexual really helped you. Uh, you resonated with it. You got clarity on
Mm-hmm.
you. So that's really cool. Now, I wouldn't mind going back one more step again, because you said you were caught in doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is I kind of resonate with that. I think a lot of the listeners would too. Is I got caught in that routine. So were you caught in that routine to fit in with your family, or to be accepted by your family or by your peers? It's kind of like that social. In your case, like I'm kind of making an assumption, generalization. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in the Chinese culture is usually what I understand is whatever the family decides, that's where you must go.
Yeah, so I think that that is definitely true in a lot of cases. My family's, I identify as being third culture. That's another layer. So I'm not fully Chinese and I'm not fully Canadian. So I grew up in Canada. I resonate with pieces of each one, but not fully, and also feel accepted and not accepted in each one.
Yeah.
But for me, my parents, it wasn't even that they forced anything really on me. I think it's just, it's very clear in a Chinese family what your parents expect of you and what the entire culture expects of you. And there's little sayings like, when you do something, you're like shaming your entire family or your lineage if you don't get like a job as a doctor or a lawyer. So they didn't need to explicitly say these things to me. It was more the micro moments of what they rewarded and what they punished. And those things over time teach you what's okay and what's not. And so things that lead to good grades, things that lead to other parents saying like, oh, wow, Chris is doing such a good job. Those are always things that I think as Chinese kids, as Asian kids, we're always trying to kind of impress not only your parents, but you're trying to have your whole family be
Mm-hmm.
impressive to other people.
And that's really cool, like you just said there, because like you made the distinction. Your parents weren't really forcing you or consciously
Mm-hmm.
forcing you there. And I think in any culture, I I think the majority of parents don't consciously try to push it.
Yes.
It's just something, a subconscious cultural influence that it's just kind of generally accepted that you go this route.
Yeah, and I think that they don't even really know what they were doing. Like
Yeah.
I don't blame them. They were doing the best that they could with the information they had, and a lot of it was passed from their parents who were 100% Chinese. And the time that they grew up in China through the Cultural Revolution and everything, like they didn't have a choice. Like I'm very lucky in comparison to them.
Yeah, that's very, very, very true. Definitely different times every generation after.
Hmm.
So another form of, yeah, I appreciate you being very honest about this, especially with that experience you had at 15 years old. You would have been having to mask to a certain degree, would you? Is that a fair assessment to say?
Yeah, I mean, even now, throughout my entire life, I've never really had like, other than her, like a proper relationship with a girl. It just hasn't happened. And I think that because throughout life I didn't tell anyone that I liked girls, it obviously wouldn't happen. And then now, as a straight presenting woman, it also is less likely that I would end up in situations. So there's like just almost automatic masking that happens as well. But yeah, I definitely would change pronouns. I wouldn't ever talk about girls that I thought that I was attracted to or whatever. I would just like mask an entire part of my life until that year when I was 24, that I actually came out. And then I tried to take active efforts to go against what I had been doing my whole life.
So when you came out, did you find that you were less masking or still trying to fight the mask?
It definitely took time. I think that this is maybe a bit ADHD style. I'm pretty impulsive and I can make pretty like quick 180 decisions. And so when I actually did come out, it was because I started talking to this girl from work. Like, she was from work and we were both a part of the queer community at work. And she was lesbian and had been out her entire life. And I remember how I made that girl when I was 15 feel when I was hiding her. Like it was horrible for her. And I was like, I cannot do that to another person. I am a full grown adult. And so I actually never really got super deep into the fact that this was hard for me at the moment. But I just, when I started meeting people, I just started introducing her and just like introducing her as like someone that I was seeing. And I just pulled the band-aid off. And I was so surprised that a lot of people didn't even notice it was a big deal for me to say it. Like they're just like, oh, cool. Because I think they just hadn't really thought about it. And they assumed it's not like I walk around being like, I'm straight, I'm straight. And so it's not like, so when I actually said that I wasn't, they were just like, okay, like nice to meet you. Like what are you up to today? And it was oddly very easy. So my first band-aid was pulled in front of everyone at work because we were both working together. We're at kind of different trips. And so that was actually easier that I
Right.
started with people who were open-minded but didn't know me so well. And then it was a little bit harder after I did that, then I did it with my friends.
How did that go? Because was that a different experience than coming out in front of your coworkers?
It was definitely harder because they had an image of me that I was scared to change, but nobody reacted negatively. I think the only slightly funny situations were when people get awkward and they don't know how to react and they're like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I should give you this like big deal caring face or if I should just pretend it's not a big deal, because at the end of the day the root is they're supportive and nothing has really changed for them, but they just don't really know how to react. And so that was mostly the only kind of slightly not super positive situations that I had to navigate.
I heard two things there. You said that people have images of us or yourself, and then would the negative reaction be more about that than you being queer?
Yeah, I think the negative reaction that I was scared of was, I think that when you start coming out, you have these a lot of like irrational thoughts. Like, for example, if I'm coming out to a friend who's a girl, I would be like, oh, like, are they going to be scared that I like them? Like, it's just weird questions that come out. And like, is our relationship going to change?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is no to all of those things, but they kind of swim in your head and you just don't really know how people are going to react. And then also, I wouldn't want someone like at the time, because I was younger, I didn't want them to think differently of me, not because I there was any way that was bad. I just liked the way that they were thinking about me, and I liked our relationship, and I was just scared of change.
Did you have similar reactions when you announced or let people know that you were diagnosed with ADHD as a woman? Even with the Chinese culture too. I'd be curious with
Mm.
that.
It's funny because I don't know what it would have been like if it was the other way around, but it was way harder for me to come out as queer, I think, because it was first. It was first, and I was younger and I was less secure. I think if I did it the other way around, maybe it would be different, but ADHD was easier for me actually because I had came out as queer. So my parents were the hardest ones to tell for both. So when I
Mm,
told my parents that I was queer, that was a whole conversation. It was long. We were on a long walk. It took a long time. And even nowadays, like whenever I'm dating a guy, my mom will be like, "Oh, you're straight now." And so it's not coming from a bad place. It's just lack of understanding. And because I had that big thing, now when I came out as ADHD a couple of years ago, or when I disclosed that I had a diagnosis, I think that like my mom was like, "Oh, just that?" Like, I think she was expecting something bigger. I don't know what it was. And I think it was partially because of our whole conversation around queerness, because we had to navigate a lot there. And she asked a lot of dumb questions that I had to try not to be defensive about. So we had that like entire muscle built up that we could kind of apply to the second situation as
mm,
well. And then I think the other thing that's really important is when I came out, when I disclosed I had ADHD, I had already finished undergrad. I had already had a job. And so I had proven to myself and other people that I could do it. And so ADHD was less of a problem to them. I think if I said that I had ADHD and I was struggling and like I had not been a full fledged adult yet, it's kind of like around the time that I was being queer, I think
right.
it would have been a harder situation where I think my parents would be like, "Don't tell anyone. Are you sure you have it?" And I think they would, and I would also deliver with less confidence probably.
Right. So it's almost as if there was a bigger bang coming out queer than the ADHD side. It's kind of what I
Yeah.
heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I think partially because of age, partially because of sequencing, but because I think both things are stigmatized in the Asian community. I do think queerness is stigmatized more, not because of anything about queerness. I just think that the Asian community is not as exposed to ADHD and mental health. So they don't really think about it as much. So mental health in general is stigmatized. But when I said I had ADHD, they're just like, what is that? So
Okay.
it's more like a new concept to them.
Uh, what kind of typical challenges are you finding in your personal life, even your work life, being a pansexual, ADHD, and a woman? And then we'll throw in the Chinese culture as it. And I think just for the listeners to understand, like I think what Chris is really talking about here about the Chinese culture is really relevant to any type of culture, I think. So it's not. I'm really finding this is applicable to everywhere. So, what
Yeah,
challenges?
yeah. And at Shimmer, we do a lot of panels for different types of cultures when it's like different months that are happening, and there's always the same themes that come out, and I'm always shocked by how similar many cultures are. Like it surfaces differently, but the symptoms and the root behind it is always really similar. But in terms of on a day to day, I think the biggest thing is that with all of these, with a lot of these, for me, it's being queer and ADHD, which are the two invisible ones, which are really important. I think it's about like this constant coming out. I think for me, like for me to feel authentic in certain situations, I need people to know these different parts of me, because I feel like if not, they start to make assumptions. And so I need to, like, in every situation, basically like assess if I want to tell them that I have ADHD, if I want to tell them that I'm queer. Is it too much information? Do they not even want to know that? So I think there's like a lot of, and especially with ADHD and the fast thinking and the overthinking, there's constantly like walking into situations. There's a lot of conversations that are going on in my head. And I think being Asian and being woman, for me, actually, ironically, has less of an impact in that perspective, because it's on my face, right? Like no one can not know that as soon as they talk to me, or as soon as they see me, I guess, or if it's on
Hmm.
video. So I think the masking piece and the coming out piece is a really important one. And I think that the the takeaway I for the rest of the world, I think, is masking exists because the space isn't safe yet. like we wouldn't need to mask and we wouldn't need to come out if the space was safe. So I think there's a lot of work that we need to do to get to a point where people don't need to disclose these things because everyone is just assumed to be different. And especially with neurodiversity numbers rising, it like I think I saw a stat that Gen Z's 50% identify as being neurodivergent. And if it's 50% of people, like it really shouldn't be stigmatized, and it shouldn't be this thing that you need to like think so
Yeah.
hard about to come out.
Wow. Well, you got a lot of great stuff in there. So, how about, can you give us a couple recommendations for a listener that's thinking of coming out or have cultural challenges and being a woman? What would you recommend to them if they got to do a big conversation for one? And what can they do to reduce the masking in their cultural and female world?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really just move at your own pace and kind of suss out the situations. You don't need to come out or say anything just because you feel like you should or just because other people are telling you to. Everyone's on their journey at their own pace. I think like my example earlier of when I could have came out when I was 15, I was given like a safe space to do so, but the space didn't feel safe to me, even though other people were feeling good about it. So I think just really taking each situation on its own, thinking about like what are the benefits you're looking to get out of being authentic, and do those outweigh the cons of that specific space? And if they do, there might be ways to also test it and start out easier. Maybe you start with a friend that you're for sure safe with, or ironically opposite, but for me it was starting with strangers that was easier for me. And I'm a huge extrovert, so for me strangers are an easy approachable group of people, but I know that's not the case for everyone. So I think listening, when you listen to podcasts like this as well, I think my experience is, as all experiences are unique, and just thinking through how your specific worldview is going to match up with these actions. So following people who are not just look like you and have the same backgrounds as you, but also have similar mindsets and personalities, I think can be really, really helpful. And thinking through and seeing how they think through things and what has worked and not worked for them could be a good starting point as well.
Yeah, I think that's very nice differentiating that you did there. The mindset and personalities. I think that's where
Hmm.
not a lot of people are attracted to or should be chasing. Um, my people with similar mindsets is definitely the only place to thrive, and that's really
Yeah.
cool distinction. So, um, wow, you have said amazing stuff here that got me thinking, and I got to keep thinking some more. So I appreciate that, Chris. Um, I think everyone can relate to this. You know, we've all been caught in the routine of doing the right thing, whether it's for your parents, your coworkers, even your peer group. Sometimes if you're in the wrong group of friends, you might, you know, maybe they're not and you want to do something else. And a great point that you made too, Chris, is like your parents may not be consciously trying to
Yeah.
enforce cultural norms, but it's just a byproduct of a life in society. So I think that's a great
Hmm.
distinction. And for me, well, I got to do four. Normally I do three, but because you really said some good stuff here. So people have images of us, and you break that image or understanding of that image when you come out as queer or identify as any
Yeah.
neurodivergence. And I think that's a really great distinction. It's not a problem with me or you they have, it's their perception. And I think that can help a lot of listeners understand if we look at it from that place, it's actually a them problem having to deal with. Now they got to change the way they talk about us. I know with my parents is they wouldn't really admit a lot of stuff because they would have to admit they were wrong. And a
Yeah.
lot of people have that challenge. And it's I don't fault them. It's just the way it is. And a lot of people would do that. So I really resonate with that. And then masking exists because the safe is not safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy shit,
I
man.
know.
Sorry, girl, whatever.
It's okay. I say man, dude, guy. It's a habit I haven't kicked yet.
But that is a great one to end on. So, Chris, thank you so much for sharing this. And this is something, like I said in the beginning, I know a lot of people in the queer community, and I've never really had a conversation about this, especially about ADHD. So I really thank you for
Yeah.
your honesty and openness. And where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram if you want to watch kind of video-based content. It's at adhd.crystal. Crystal spelled CHRISTAL. LinkedIn, shimmer.care for ADHD coaching. Those are the main ones. Also, I have a couple of stats I forgot to mention in the beginning. I don't know if you want me to
Go
say
for
them
it.
so that you might want
Yep.
to put this in the beginning.
It's all in the wrong order. That's fine. I'm okay with that.
Okay, perfect. So whenever I talk about queerness and ADHD, I actually do want to anchor in the stats because I think a lot of people don't know these. And so the two that three I want to share. So the first one is there's a 2021 study that was done, and basically LGBTQ, so queer folks, are 2 to 4 times more likely to have an ADHD diagnosis. So the intersection is quite large. And then the second one, which I know because of we talked mostly about just actually like being queer and I guess being attracted to another gender or the same gender, but there's also just having a same-sex experience, which I guess is kind of 1 degree under because you could just be exploratory. And those numbers are actually even more stark. So for women, two times as many people have had a same-sex experience as neurotypical folks. And then for men, this is wild, 5 times as many ADHDers
Five
have had
times?
has had a same-sex
Interesting.
experience than neurotypical men. And the last one I recently talked about, which I think is an important one too, is 70% of queer neurodivergent people, they reported masking both identities at work just to feel safe.
Yeah, for sure. That I believe that one. And I don't know the exact number, but the autism neurodivergence as well has a
Yep.
higher percentage of queerness or
Yeah. We did a whole
so
panel one time on being a non-binary and the autism intersection, which
yeah.
is really strong as well.
So no, that's great. I appreciate those stats. I know the listeners appreciate it. I know I do. Learned something new on those numbers. So thank you. And for you, the listeners, being queer and having ADHD may come with unique challenges. The road may be tough, but you are built for it. So embrace who you are, own it, and get that safe space created. And for you also, how did you, the listener, overcome the challenges of being queer and ADHD? I'd like to hear about it. And I would also like to share with Chris if you share it with me. So if you can send me an email at andre@theimpulsivethinker.com. How you overcame your challenges, I know will be a great trick for other people to overcome their challenges as well. So, Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. This is a lot of fun.
It was. And to you, the listeners, thanks again for learning with me. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.